What's up, people? This time it's Rauta with some very exotic black roll. This comes from Singapore and it's a band that I've featured a couple of times before. This is Tok Yathraa with the chapter Orang Minyak. Don't know exactly about the pronunciation, so give me some slack with it. This one is a Singapore one-man project operating roughly in the world of black and roll. And the thing here is, this is very unique in style, not necessarily for people who are expecting some kind of a Western take on metal. Not purely black metal the way you are supposed to figure it out, not exactly pure rock and roll either. This is interesting, but kind of a special type of metal music, which is definitely not for everybody. But that being said, it's also interesting because it's quite some different that we're used to, especially with the European kind of black metal and all that stuff. Now, there's something weird going on with Tok Yathraa, given that it's been only out for a couple of years, founded in 2020, and there's already 4 albums out, this being the 4th one, and then plenty, like 10 or so, various mini releases, compilations, or whatever. So there is a lot of things going on, and one could say sometimes it totally feels, oftentimes, that it's more about quantity over quality. But be it as may, this is what the band or artist in question is doing, and you can either love it or hate it, but it's not for everybody. This is so fresh from the oven of March 2022 release that it's even not on Metal Archive's site just yet, so I'll tune you for the band's Bandcamp site where this album is already featured. And as you can see, already 7 different releases here listed as well. So all these full albums are listed with the name chapter and then a particular title. For example, this one is this Orang Minyak. Don't know what the Minyak means. Probably there might be some explanation, but that's for you to figure out in case you're looking for some more information. But this is a word that seems to go back and forth here during this album. There's a couple of tracks featuring the same, actually 3 tracks featuring the same word. So it's kind of a theme of the whole album here. But the music is what you're probably interested in, and this is interesting because at the same time, this is definitely a rock and roll album. I mean, there's definitely a big amount of rock and roll riffs, which then again are blend together with, you know, more metallic side. So black and roll is definitely very fitting genre name for this one. But the songwriting parts, and especially the vocals parts, are something that you can really put you off. You can either love them because they're so unique, one of a kind, or just hate them because they're just too unique and one of a kind. I'll try to explain. Some of the riffs are very, very rock and rollish, even to a level that this kind of reminds me of Japanese version of, you know, black heavy metal artists or bands operating in that area, but kind of a little bit weirder in one sense, and at the same time also quite easy to get into. Some of the riffs are totally just, you know, fillers, so there are lots of ideas which are not too great. But there are actually pretty good amount of rather good riffs, which makes this rather interesting to listen to. The vocals, then again, are not your typical black metal raspiness, nor they are your typical rock and rollish style, whatever it means, really. But they're, you know, kind of a one of a kind, like a weird combination between the two, which makes this rather odd release. But once you get used to it, maybe they don't bother you after a while. Certainly didn't bother me after a while, even though I must say I'm not really a fan of this given style. I think this is a band that would actually deserve a better vocalist, but that's just me. One other thing that bothers me with this album is the drum machine, because it's not good. It's not annoying, but it's kind of on the weaker side. But when you're talking about the riffs and guitar sound, I think it's pretty solid, and it's actually pretty good for an underground release, especially coming from Singapore, one-man band, not a big budget band going for a real big-ass studio and all that stuff. So those more powerful riffs with this rather decent guitar sound is actually more than enough to do kind of a good feeling with these riffs and ideas. And I must really say that even though I'm not exactly a fan of this given style, I kind of like that this is doing totally something else what you're usually used to with any kind of a combination of metal and rock, and especially when we're talking about black and roll, which is already kind of a hard cookie to crack in the terms of like usually they don't go very well together. I mean, if you really want to go deep into the underground of black metal, you don't really necessarily enjoy the kind of a more mainstream rock and roll parts. But this is blending them together, and it's kind of a weird. I mean, there is part of like, hey, let's sing about rock and roll on motorcycles. I'm like, what the hell, man? But then again, this whole album is a little bit weird, so I dig that with an Asian twist, if you will. I don't know. This is an interesting release, not so much maybe a good release, but while listening to, I gave this a few spins, and I must say, it's not annoying at all, but it's not really pleasing either. But that's only because this is not totally my cup of tea. Interesting, not good so much, I guess. But definitely if you want something else, something different, go for the band's Bandcamp site and give it a listen. Then you can at least figure out for yourself whether or not you're going to like this one. And if you do, go for the physical format. These are good looking ones. And yeah, it's going to be something different for you all together. That's it. Should you have any questions or comments, put them on the comment box below and I'll get back to you. Meanwhile, bye-bye.